Welcome to That Japanese Thing. Today we're going to be talking about light novels. I'm your host Chris, and today with me is Yesh and Dylan. Welcome, guys. How are you doing?
Hello,
Hi.
hello.
Good. So today, we're going to be just talking about what are light novels and which one should you read. Our local expert Yesh has, been studying this topic for many years now, so he'll be able to answer us very thoroughly, I think.
Possibly.
But before that, let's look at some news from Japan. This is one that me and Yash were talking about just a few moments ago. Floppy disks in Japan have been signaled out by the Minister for Technology. In a tweet, Konotaro said that the digital minister declares war on floppy disks. There are about 1,900 government procedures that require business communities to use disks. So floppy disks are not just used still; they're required. They also require CDs. I'm not sure what MDs are, and so on and so forth. Media disks, I guess.
Mini
disks.
Mini
Mini disks. Wow. To submit applications and other forms, the digital agency has to change those regulations so you can use them online. Now, you will recall a man in Kirishima, was it? Or Nagasaki, somewhere around there, got drunk and lost a USB drive, right?
Yeah.
With hundreds of thousands of people's records on at a bar. So this is probably to try and prevent that from happening, I guess. It's about 20 years later than it should have been done, for sure.
Well, he's receiving pushback. Did you see that?
Yes. I mean, many of the people that have worked in Japanese public offices have done so for at least 50 years. So to them, floppy disks are cutting edge technology that they still don't quite know how to use. So.
Well, they're primarily saying that no other information storage utility that they have tested remains as stable for as long. Because floppy disks can hold their data for 20 to 30 years relatively reliably. According to some guys from, Tokyo's Meguro Ward said that they have almost never lost data while using floppies.
Indeed. It has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that Sony has a huge contract to make 3.5-inch floppy disks for that ward, I'm sure.
Certainly, probably not, because they are being produced by Sony. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Right. But I mean, they are stable because they basically use a variation on tape disk technology. If they wanted to, they could still store records on tape disks for archive purposes. There's nothing stopping them from doing. I mean, banks do that for records that don't need to be accessed immediately, but they still use, modern technology, so you can transact in under 5 days, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, not Japanese banks, but yes.
That is probably true. I mean, Japanese banks do tend to take 1 to 2 business days to do just about anything, really.
Although, for me, to return back to this topic, he's also under fire because he doesn't like the seals. The stamp seal?
Yes.
He also calls that non-secure. And people are like, well, he doesn't like the floppy because he doesn't like tradition. He's also against stamp seals, the fool. And everyone else in the world is just like, yeah, that's dumb, though. He's right, though.
It's a strange thing, right? Because, I mean, a hanko, the hand stamp that you use to sign things in Japan, people don't like that very much. Some people really like it because, it's traditional and you can get really cool ones and they look good.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like a tradition of, everyone in an apartment, handing it up the chain and everyone just puts their little mark on it to say that the work is all done and it kind of looks official, right? Neat and tidy. But many people in Japan have the same name, even more so than elsewhere in the world. So you can just go to a thrift store or a $100 100 yen store, $1 store, and buy a name stamp that has your last name on it or whatever, and it'll be the same as the other 2 million people that have that exact same surname.
And yet, some people say that that's still more secure than a signature.
Right, and yeah, I mean,
in Japan, a signature is considered less secure somehow than a hanko.
And obviously, like, a signature is unique to everyone's idiosyncratic way of writing. So it makes no sense. None of this makes any sense. There's obviously, people make the hankos. There's probably a big business. Japan isn't a corrupt country, but it is like a country that sort of takes care of its own industries. And this is like obviously like one of those protected things. Get the Sony contract. There's probably some company that makes all these stamps somewhere, that has a big backlog. They want to make sure people are still buying them, or whatever. But yeah, it's a silly thing, and it's good that they're doing this. They need to do it much faster. Japan needs to do a lot of things a lot faster, but yeah, that's part of the charm of Japan. It never quite does. And then we have anime news. Netflix has bought 13 anime titles in a new deal. And it's going to be streaming anywhere in the world, I believe, any of these titles. That's the bigger news anyway. So, most of these are on Japanese Netflix already. So if you're like VPNing in like I do, it's not really going to be much of a surprise to you, but there's some nice ones. Most of them are older. There's Death Note, Hunter x Hunter, Nana Claymore. I'm not sure what Kimi ni Todoke is. I don't recognize that one. Parasite, The Maxim. There's Arnhurst High, which is great. I recommend it. And there is Monster, Hajime no Ippo, and also the 1997 Berserk. Some of them are new titles, but it's nice to see that if you're an international person who doesn't want to use a VPN for some reason, you can now just get more anime. Obviously, people will be familiar with the rather lacking showing of anime in some countries. It's not so bad in America. There's actually some anime that you can get in the States that you can't get in Japan. Korea is also pretty good. Taiwan's also pretty good that way. But for most of the rest of the world, there's usually like 20, maybe 40 titles that aren't strictly produced by Netflix themselves that are available, which, isn't great. So now there's a few more, which is good, and I hope they keep doing this, especially with older stuff. I'd like there just to be a good back catalogue of popular shows that you can rewatch. I don't know if there's any popular shows you think you'd like to see on Netflix. I was thinking it would be nice if they just get some of those like early 2000s shows. I'd like to see Nadesco on there. They already have Gundam, as far as I know.
Yes, they do. Well, it was crazy popular, so
yeah,
they obviously had a buying department that just went out and got the stuff.
And unfortunately, they used to have Dragon Ball, but I guess that is going to sort of start disappearing off other streaming services as Crunchyroll makes it kind of exclusive to its own platform, which is unfortunate. Okay, and then lastly, Uncle from Another World. How do you like the show? You've been watching it, right?
I have been watching it.
Likewise.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no. I've also been watching.
It really comes off as like a great, entertaining story, doesn't it? Despite the fact that basically it's just this idiot, like, well, he's not stupid. He's like a person with a mental disease. That's the way I view Uncle. Like, he doesn't understand people. He's got what's that syndrome where you can't understand what people are, like the subtext of what people are trying to say to you.
It's like you're on the spectrum somewhere.
Yeah, yeah.
He's kind of like that. I think he's supposed to represent the ultimate What's the thing from the
Neat.
Welcome to the NHK was neat. There we go.
Yeah.
He's supposed to represent the ultimate
yeah.
neat.
No, well,
Completely
yeah,
disconnected
maybe
from-
not a
But-
neat,
but-
but definitely a hikikukomori.
Well, I mean, for sure, he is, you know, an otaku. He likes playing his games, and he wouldn't be a NEET per se, but he would be like just that kind of geeky guy. And I think, but I mean, you know, Kazuma's a NEET, right? But he doesn't actually have trouble interacting with people. He has a bad personality.
I would say in the beginning he does have trouble interacting with people.
But he doesn't
read
not understand what people are feeling, you know. not to this extent anyway.
Fair enough,
Yeah.
not to this extent. But I think that's the point of Isekai Oji-san. The joke, the humor, is from his inability to read people's emotions.
And that's my my takeaway from this is that apparently the work environment for Isekai Oji-san it was so bad, and people were being mistreated so much that caused a lot of weird delays. COVID infections have also, you know, not helped.
No, but the working industry for animation in Japan.
But one of the
has-
directors has come out and he's like put up some tweets, and he said, you know, like some of the staff there are being abused. I mean, in a very like Japanese sort of way. There was no animation staff available. One of the staff, I told a person not to treat a person I introduced him to so carelessly, and to please act appropriately, right? So there's some weird stuff going on with the production of this show, and that's why there's been some delays, because that he said was like 3 or 4 days before an episode was supposed to be aired, but there were no staff assigned to, you know, the editing of that episode.
So it didn't air.
Which is a shame, because also the social media campaign for Isekai Oji-san, I don't know if you've seen any of it, is really great. Like they've got like a weird one of those weird rubber masks with the Oji-san's face, and he's been given an official certificate as like a Sega kind of employee or Hall of Fame guy.
Okay, fair enough.
Nice.
And like, you know, there's some guy, they dress someone up as like Sonic, you know, have him run around like with him. And it's been great, it's been fun. But sadly, behind the scenes, it's not been fun making the show. But it's a great show, and it
is. Yeah.
And maybe some of those not fun people are good at their jobs, at least. So I hope it does get a second season, though.
My favorite tragedy
so
comedy.
far.
So I sincerely hope things improved over there so that it can keep being made. There's so many good arcs in it that it would just be a travesty if basically an abusive asshole shuts it down.
Yeah. But it's an NHK broadcasting, I think, which is generally a good sign that it'll get 3 seasons. That is sort of how they work. So even if it does have a bad apple, they can probably replace them. So I'm hopeful. But those are my stories. Yash, what do you have for us?
I was going to cover the floppy disk story that we talked about earlier, but obviously that's been done. I did want to bring some light or attention to a second story involving Japan moving a bit forward, perhaps. An internet provider has been taken to court and successfully defeated to provide the information for a person who has defamed another person. Now, Japanese court's pretty famous for making sure the case doesn't go to trial.
Indeed.
In the hopes that they don't have to get a statistic of a crime happened, so a trial had to happen. But once things go to trial, they have a very high "no, you're guilty" rate.
Yeah, so the Japanese conviction rate is 95%. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily qualify it in that sense. They do encourage people to sort of sort out all of their civil disputes, you know, at a lawyer's office.
Because they feel like it's embarrassing to have high numbers of crime recorded.
It's also essentially just a waste of the court's time.
I don't know.
In civil cases, anyway.
A lot of these
because
instances
the court should be dealing
are
with
people
criminal
being
things.
pushed to not go to court, even if there's a crime. But regardless of our opinions on that matter, in this instance, somebody insulted a person on the internet in a very harsh way, and they were trying to hide behind the defense. While they are streaming, they are a character. They're not a person.
Oh wow, that's a favorite for Japan. That defense, by the way, you'll find that in a number of areas.
They're trying to suggest that it was a mascot that they were insulting. They're trying to suggest that the person online doesn't act like that, so they were insulting their persona. But the court determined that, well, you see, she didn't have a mother growing up, is just not really attacking the mascot. So, no. Yes, the insults were, she's very dumb, she's mentally immature because she didn't have a mother, etc., etc.
So what did they get?
No. So the person that defamed them was anonymous because the internet provider refused to provide the information so that this person could sue them. Not the internet company, I mean the person who defamed them.
Right.
So this case was to sue the internet provider to get the identity of the person who defamed them.
Right.
There will be another case going against that person in the coming days. Obviously, the court has already ruled that this is defamation and therefore should be permitted to go through. So if they have the historic case rules in Japan, I'm sure they'll use that as like a fast forward, no, you messed with me too much, buddy, ruling.
It depends, I think, where the money is in the situation. Because it could go one of two ways. The government might follow the sort of, the public's point of view and just allow this to happen, and then, people have to be more careful about what they say, which is probably the good way of going about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, the reason why this is important, Japanese news in particular, is because Japan has previously been extremely negative about allowing cases through for internet comments.
Yeah.
They have previously suggested that comments on the internet, they haven't directly said it, but their rulings have suggested that comments made on the internet should not be held no one should be held responsible for comments made on the internet. This sentiment apparently started to change when someone was actually jailed for comments they made about, it's not the prime minister, some government official. Sorry, I don't have where the change began exactly. But after that, they have now started to make progress on things you say online can get you in trouble. So perhaps don't be an asshole.
It's, which is fine. The courts were trying to argue, like, do you know what the de minimis rule is? Like, it's too small of a thing to be concerned with, basically.
Oh, okay.
Which in most instances it would be, right? I mean, getting insulted on the internet, how does that affect you in real life? But obviously, if it's really serious, that's a different issue altogether.
Well,
their reasoning, though, is that if they have to deal with all of this, it's just going to take up all of their time. Which is also true.
Which also has a validity, yes.
Yeah.
This live streamer is suggesting that this person has damaged their reputation, and their online reputation is what they use to make their money.
Yeah. No, yeah, for sure it is something that needs to find a balance somewhere. I just hope they don't use it as a way to, like... you can kind of see a logical chain of, okay, so now if you want to insult someone, you need to use a VPN, right? So that you're...
I can sort of see how that's going, but, like, I mean, it surely must be possible to insult someone without insulting them so badly that they can sue you.
Well, we're not talking about smart people here. We're talking about internet trolls, right?
Well, that's the thing. Perhaps internet trolls should be slapped firmly.
Sure.
Repeatedly as well, perhaps.
But now it goes to, okay, so these people are getting caught, and then they start using an anonymous service like a VPN to hide their identity even further. And Japan goes after, say, the VPN companies to try and get...
The majority of VPN companies have been keeping records. Surfshark has been sued by the Japanese government before. They've released information to the Japanese government.
Sure. But famously, Nord is...
Nord has resisted
that, yeah. Although there's been some indications maybe the FBI has some influence there.
Here's where things need to be kept a bit like you should be careful. The fact that Nord resisted tells you that they have record.
Sure. No, I don't doubt that. I mean, everyone's details were leaked a few years ago in Nord. So obviously there
I'm
are
just
records.
saying, having a VPN is not protection. It's mild at best in the form of protection.
I just worry that this goes back to a politician, and then they think, VPN companies are the problem, and anyway.
Well, I mean, with Japan, they're going to be insulted by anything. So
yeah,
it's easy to make a showboat out of it. That's kind of I think everyone's kind of in agreement with the different facets of it.
sure.
But it's not effective as at security, but it is easy to target and attack as a political
attack
showcase.
target.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on though. I think. And Dylan.
Yeah, I've just got two stories. One being that Japan's pledged $30 billion worth of funding, investment, both public and private, to Africa. And this is, I mean, in the articles I've read, it stated that this is as a means to counter China's influence. So it's quite a
significant.
Well, it's quite a. I mean, it's a very direct way of saying that they're trying to limit Chinese influence on the continent, and they've broken it down.
I mean, it's 0.02% of Japan's GDP.
Yeah.
It's not that significant, to be honest.
No. What is significant is stating what the purpose of it is for. Right? They're not saying this is aid. They're not saying that this is trying to improve relationships between the two countries, which would be the normal tagline.
Yeah, indeed.
There'd be some sort of thin veneer of a reason over what they're really doing. This is stating, and whether it will be effective or not is a different question entirely. I'd quite happily admit that. But this is just significantly stating that no, we don't like what China's currently doing on the continent. We're going to try and counteract it.
I think, yeah. What's going on is we're having a new sort of formation of a NATO-like organization in the Pacific. So I think people have realized that America is not really strong enough to contend with China alone anymore. Especially in light of Russia acting up at the same time. So Japan, after Russia invaded Ukraine, has a border with Russia, and Russia's an ally with China. So the US is pressuring Japan to sort of be more active in that regard. I think that's what's happening. And Australia is also acting the same way, and India is having a similar moment of clarity about its position, I guess, as well. So, I mean, you see this is just this is basically just talk, right? But it indicates that Japan is not on the side of the China-centric world. I don't know what the proper Sino-centric maybe.
I know Sino-centric.
Yeah. Which no one ever thought they were, so I'm not entirely sure what they're clarifying with that. But it's nice that they're trying to do something good in that regard as well, I suppose. Incidentally, next year, midway through, Japan will be the third strongest military in the world. I don't know if you saw that.
No, I didn't.
Is Germany 2?
Germany will be 4 or 5, I think. But Germany's going slower than Japan. So Japan is
doubled their military.
Japan has also doubled their military spending, but Germany is doubling their military spending over the next 4 years. Japan's just doubling it, right? So immediately, I mean, obviously, the US has got a huge backlog of stuff, so it's not going to be they're just under China or whatever in terms of military strength, but in terms of spending, Japan will be the third biggest military in the world next year. We're living in kind of a scary time, it feels.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel like deciding to do it over the next 4 years, like Germany's doing it. I'm not saying that they've got any other options, but I feel like it's a bit. I don't know. I think Japan's right in just doing it now.
They're not wrong. I'm just saying, 100 years ago in the 20s, 100 years ago in the 20s, Germany and Japan were also number 3 and 4. Some different players now, but not a great showing for the world at the moment with the military.
Oh no. At the moment, currently, there's a lot that there's to be sort of. It would be valid to be concerned over. Let me word it that way.
So, on that note, why don't we move to some escapism and start talking about light novels? Yes, what is a light novel?
So basically, a light novel is just a novel that was written with the specific intent of being relatively easy to go through, be it through lighter language or through just a shorter experience in cover-to-cover reading. Intended also traditionally to have multiple volumes.
So I've heard them compared to novellas, which is originally a French, Spanish sort of short novel. But a novella differs from a novel only in the fact that it is shorter. So it's like let's say like a 40,000 word book.
So light novels have a tendency to be 50,000 or less, but of course some light novels push that limit, specifically Overlord.
Yeah, but I haven't looked into this in terms of research, but from reading some light novels, I tend to think that it's not just a novel, right? It's not just a short.
It's not meant to be a complete story,
right?
In particular,
and they always have like 5 chapters, basically, don't they?
So now that's interesting because that number has changed drastically over the years. But currently, we tend towards, I think, 7 or 6.
Okay. But around that range. So they have...
Around that range, yeah.
The 5-ish sort of range of chapters, and then maybe they have like a appendix sort of story.
The Super Trash has 5 on average, I will say that.
Yeah, like Konosuba, for example.
Didn't Konosuba have... Oh, I could be wrong.
Always 5, as far as I'm aware. And then they had like a side story as the 6th part of the book. Usually.
Right, that's why I always think of Konosuba as a 6th.
But anyway, so that's basically the way I see a light novel. And in addition to that, they always have anime characters on the front.
Absolutely so. In fact, that relates to the origins of light novels and its popularity in particular.
Yes, because manga was more popular than light novels were originally.
In the beginning, exactly. Mm-hmm. So to talk about the beginning of light novels, long story short, after an anime production was particularly popular, in order to gain increased franchising, apart from making mascot characters, which have been popular in Japan for literally decades now, some people began trying to make light novel continuations of things as it became difficult to get a 2nd season, 3rd season, 4th season of an anime going. And you don't want to lose your audience because sometimes the anime would come out 5 years after the previous season. So to fill the interim, they would get the writers of the anime or the person who created the anime to write like some short scripts for something to fill in between. And then they'd get like terrible novelists. I don't wish to insult anyone, but let's be clear here. The quality of writing in a light novel...
Just to interrupt you slightly, I think the original idea was to make radio plays with that material.
It's entirely possible that it was intended for radio plays, but I do know the intent was to franchise popular anime so that you could fill the gap in between seasons.
Yes, yeah.
It's entirely possible that doing a radio play would have been just as equivalent to making a light novel. But light novels took off because they didn't perhaps want to spend the money, perhaps spend the effort on voice acting to get radio plays out. So they instead went with just a shotgun of light novels. In particular, Slayers is one of the credited early light novels that became popular after its anime came out. Its light novel became quite popular.
When was...
And Record of Lodoss War.
Records of Lodoss War was definitely a manga, wasn't it?
So that's the thing. Record of Lodoss War was a manga, then it got animated, and then its anime created a light novel.
Okay.
Not the manga.
Oh yeah, I remember reading something about that. That's
it's
so weird.
Specifically, the anime created a light novel, not the manga, which is kind of a backwards way of doing it, because Record of Lodoss War was already a successful manga.
Yeah. But by the way, the manga is so much better than the anime, just if anyone's wondering which version of the thing they should read. It's almost it's a completely different story. Well. Yeah.
I have not read the Record of Lodoss War manga.
I recommend
it.
It is very dark though, so
I think that's perhaps why I avoided it. However, I did want to touch on something important here. In the old days, light novels were written shotgun style to fill the space between anime seasons. And nowadays, because of because the government of Japan put up a particular website, Sotetsu, I can't remember how to say that name entirely.
Don't know.
But basically, they created a website for people who wanted to become writers. I don't know what spurred this on for them.
But basically, sounds maybe right.
It's a place where you can publish your light novel introduction. People comment on it, you edit it, and then they comment on it again. So you get the entirety of anyone who uses the website to be your editor. And from this has sprung just a flood, an avalanche of light novels. One of the light novels born on this website was The Melancholy of Suzumiya Haruhi.
I was going to just bring that up right now, right?
Indeed.
So that for me is the one that kind of started it all, right? the transition.
Almost entirely exactly correct. So, Melancholy of Suzumiya Haruhi was originally a light novel on this website, written by a complete amateur in many regards. He got a book writing deal because every year, 1 to 5 of the authors from the website gets a contract from Kodansha, from assorted other publishing companies, to release up to 3 LNs, light novels, of their work officially. So you go from a website author to a published author.
Yeah.
Which is an incredible opportunity, actually.
And that actually means something in Japan as well.
Because being on the shelves, lots of people read the stuff off of the shelves. And in particular, when Suzumiya Haruhi's books hit the shelves, an anime studio guy, I don't know who exactly, read some of the Haruhi stuff and pitched it to his studio. And that's how it became an anime. And from there, The Melancholy of Suzumiya Haruhi was ridiculously popular as an anime. I'm not going to talk about how some people still consider spending money on anime to be a waste of effort. I hate those people. But long story short, they put some effort in, they put some artistic energy into it. It became a big success at the time. And this spurred a lot of companies to go to Soyetsu and try and get authors to give them the rights to make animes from their things, which has in turn created just an avalanche of semi-type anime. So for a while there, while Haruhi was popular, we got just 50 to 60 high school anime, like in a year.
Oh boy, that was a decade, wasn't it?
And it just kept happening. But then, one of those light novels, Sword Art Online, became quite popular for a different reason. And now all we get are isekai anime for another set of decades. In particular, I wanted to read out this list. The other anime that got big around the time of Haruhi was a certain Magical Index and a certain Scientific Railgun. Both of those became quite big at one point. And since then, Sword Art Online, The Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime, Overlord, ReZero, and Konosuba have all exploded successfully from light novels.
What I found interesting about Haruhi, in particular, not just that it started off the whole craze, and so it sort of started off in 2003, and by the time they made the show, they had, I think, 6-ish novels to work with.
Mm-hmm.
And basically they did them all in the first season, as far as I remember. I don't remember exactly if they include
I'm not 100% certain about that. I stopped watching Haruhi after season 2.
No, that brings me to season 2, right? Because season 2 is the time loop season.
Mm-hmm.
And
Endless 8.
They knew it existed at the time of filming.
Oh, absolutely.
Or at the time of directing and creating the anime.
Here's the
Because
problem.
you see the outfits from the time loop in the club room throughout, right?
Mm-hmm. You do, yeah. The problem is that the response to the Endless 8 on the internet from reading the novella was positive.
That's what I'm saying. The light novel time loop book is one of the most popular. People really loved reading it, but it's the most bloody boring thing to watch.
The internal dialogue of Kyon and stuff must have been very good. I have not read Endless 8 as a note because I watched the anime and I'm still angry about it.
I've watched it twice.
It must have been really well written, but when it came time to put it in the anime, they just didn't get across what made Endless 8 good, apparently, because I did not enjoy that at all.
So I think you have to approach it from this perspective and this perspective alone. You have to try and watch for subtle differences, and
you do see them at least,
and just try to more deeply appreciate like the nuances of what's going on every time you see it.
Well, also watching Nagatoro slowly fall apart when she's like the most stoic of all characters was an interesting and unique experience.
Yeah, I mean, she doesn't really fall apart per se, but she does sort of get gradually.
She starts showing emotion, which is just unique.
She doesn't really, though, does she? No, she does. Well, not on the series, anyway.
She displays melancholy and irritation.
Yeah, no. Certainly, she is getting fed up with it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if there's. I mean, she doesn't really display any sort of emotion, but the way she acts sort of indicates that maybe she's feeling something. I guess that's what I would say. She certainly is, very capable of emotion. Just she doesn't have the mechanical aptitude for it, I suppose.
Well, Kyon's primary clue to the fact that this has been happening more than he realized even is that she's breaking down way more than he expected.
Yeah.
So he begins to realize it's entirely possible.
Just for context, for people who haven't seen it, she goes through this 15,000 times. This
particular set of days.
3 weeks or something?
3 weeks, yeah. And the long story short of it is there's a god who wants a specific event to happen, i.e. all of the friends hang out. And because our protagonist is denser than a black hole, he doesn't pick up that she wants to hang out, and so he just goes home. And then the god resets time to make it happen again, in the hopes that something will be different this time.
Yeah, I mean, just if no one's read Huri is literally God, I think. I'm not sure if it's just of Earth or the entire universe, but she's also unaware that she's God, which is like kind of the sleeping God archetype, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, she can essentially accomplish anything she wants. So any fancy that goes through her head simply becomes reality. She just happens to miss most of the more fanciful things that are happening around her. But it's I think it's great. It launches into like the whole light novel craze, and that has produced a lot of good anime. But it's also had like a really negative effect on anime as well. I feel.
Theme effect, which we have talked about before, where when one specific anime explodes, all of the books from that theme get animated, and then for the next almost a decade, we just get variations on that one theme.
And not only that, I think because Kadokawa and other publishers want to sell books more than they want to make anime, you get a lot of beginnings to anime that no one has any intention of ever ending, right? So
also true.
Every season there's like 5 isekai that come out that no one's ever going to touch again, and unfortunately one of those will always be someone's favorite anime. That if they're lucky, 10 years down the road, maybe they'll get a second season 2, and then that'll be it.
As long as Maishimashita Irumakun keeps happening, I'm happy.
Maishimashita Irumakun, which is Welcome to Demon School Irumakun, I think. We haven't talked about Bakemonogatari, which I think is maybe the second most important one after Haruri. But I would argue, like, the light novels for it done. I mean, I have one of the light novels for it. It's basically exactly the same as the first series. They even like include a lot of the written dialogue in the series. You know, all that like script that goes through. Yeah. That's all in the novel for some reason in English. I don't understand why it's there, but you know.
Otto-kun has a great deal of fun with that sort of stuff. So
yeah,
his previous works have shown that he likes that.
But for me, like, the light novel is just okay, I feel. The anime is actually fantastic. And it kind of... It was one of those animes that sort of started... that brought back a kind of art style and just a high quality feel to anime that it was just lacking for a good 5 years before that. And
it's also because a lot of studios resist improving the art style.
Or spending money. It's real as well. So if something is as popular as Haruri, no one knew Haruri was going to be as popular as it was. I mean, obviously, they had some indication from the sales of the light novel. But then people knew that because Bakemonogatari was similarly popular, they could spend a lot of money on an anime. And
really
no one's watched it. I mean, you really should. I mean, I don't even like the story of Bakemonogatari. I don't like the characters in it, but the animation style is fantastic. You don't have to even like pay attention to what's going on. There's just scene after scene of great direction, artistic like scenes and choices of background. It's really great. And sadly, it gets progressively worse as you go on and on throughout the.
That's my problem. I made it through to about season 4, Owari Monogatari.
I think Neko Monogatari was my.
I went all the way through Neko Monogatari because actually, the whole family abuse thing leading into a fire just felt really interesting. Actually, I must admit, yes, I stopped paying attention to the main character and his girlfriend.
Yeah.
But the focus of the story of the tiger and the girl that ate the tiger, not the fact that the twist of that was that the girl ate the tiger, not that the tiger ate the girl, was very interesting to me.
I mean, I quite like the girlfriend character. Weird yandere type. Senjo Gahara, yeah. Which is just it's like calling someone the Battle of Hastings.
But she's a crab.
Yes. She was the girl who lost all her weight or something. Anyway, from that point, things really started going downhill. And, well, I mean, I don't want to say Sword Art Online is bad and you should feel bad for watching it because, you know, people feel bad enough already watching Sword Art Online. If you like it, it's fine. But because it was so popular, we kept getting more trash, right?
So that's the problem. Sword Art Online began the isekai trend again. And from that isekai trend, we have delved. And now it's so hard to remember what anime was like before isekai. But
right.
It's not like it was particularly better, if I'm honest with you. Because it went from, oh my god, everything's a shonen, to, oh my god, everything's a high school.
There was a brief 5-year period where everything was a shoujo storyline as well.
Also, Fruits Basket. Oh.
Fruits Basket, Orange High, Nana, so on and so forth.
Hey.
I mean, we're coming back there slowly with Shikikomori.
We are actually.
That's a shonen. She's just a cool guy with long hair. I'm sorry.
No, I will fight you on this. It's a reverse shoujo. It's totally a reverse shoujo.
No, she's just the guy, and the boyfriend is the girl. It's just a gender swap.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all.
But it's still a shoujo though.
It's a shonen. She just happens to be a girl.
I disagree. I agree that there is a gender role swap, but it's not on the shonen side.
She even has a harem.
It's a shoujo.
Anyway.
Anyway,
I like that show. I want more of it.
I am feeling like we're getting out of the isekai trap. Because the number of shows that are just not isekai anymore, but are straight fantasies, is increasing.
But part of the reason we're staying in the isekai so long is because we got ReZero. And that was just, great again. It almost felt like a Monogatari, but an isekai version of it. And it had all that emotional, manipulation, which, really gets people to sort of, buy all the books, right? But then we got No Game, No Life. Another one.
I hate No Game, No Life as a note.
It's not great. It's not bad, but people went mad for it. And that intensified the trash race.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Right to the bottom.
What the publishers took from No Game, No Life was, as long as the waifus are giant-titted, we don't need to think. So, we got all of this waifu stuff became the focus rather than even adventuring has taken a backseat to waifuing.
Indeed.
It's wild.
And sadly, there have been some good ones that have made good animes and people have liked them, but they haven't been as popular or not popular enough or not have caught the imagination of enough people.
Well, that's the problem with producing 48 anime a season.
Yes.
Even if something is good, it doesn't have the audience appeal anymore.
But I'm just talking about...
Everyone's excited about something different.
Why did No Game, No Life become such a big thing when Toradora, a vastly superior show, didn't, spawn a whole bunch of that sort of rom-com kind of stuff?
So Toradora is considered one of the best anime of that era, but it didn't explode at that time.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you why that is.
I mean, I would say the only thing we've had comparable to Toradora since then is currently airing, which is A Couple of Cuckoos, is the English title, I think. The Cuckoo's Nest, or whatever it is called in Japanese. And... But we didn't get many more in that genre, specifically from light novels.
I have a theory, but it's because I'm such a cynical bastard.
Yeah.
My theory is because you could throw literally a bunch of bouncy balls in a room with a typewriter and produce an isekai, whereas writing a romance requires people to have emotions that are relatable to humans. And that might take some degree of talent, so we don't want that.
I imagine that's how In Another World with My Smartphone came about.
I mean, just think about it, right? Yeah, exactly that, right?
Anyway, moving on. Continuing the trash race to the bottom, we got Konosuba, which is wonderful because it is the worst trash assembled together in a four-man team. But it's self-aware of how bad it is. And that's why it works, and that's why it's funny. That's why it's kind of clever in places.
I'm convinced the author managed to sell his work as that low-grade trash so that people would just push it through to animation. And then he snuck all of the humor in past them. The actual good shit.
He did that, but just remember, past book 5, which we haven't got to in the anime, Kazuma is the worst person I've ever seen in an anime story.
When he went face down on the undead lady's lap, I was like, Kazuma, you are my hero. Thank you. Truly, the trash floweth over.
I just the princess arc. I don't know if they can animate that.
They won't.
They'll just have to cut so much stuff out.
They're literally just going to cut the princess arc.
Just for clarity, Kazuma briefly tries to run away with a 11-year-old girl.
So he initially began flirting with the princess, but then he accidentally adopted her as his younger sister. Against his own will, he started to be protective of her as if she was his own little sister.
Yoshi's being very generous with his description of yeah.
A little bit generous, but let's be clear. You can say that he was jealous in a romantic way, but it really never felt like he was looking at her like that.
It's not so much that, is that she clearly like sort of falls in love with him, right?
She clearly has romantic interest in him, yes.
And then the only solution the author could come up with is just erase everyone's memory of the incident.
Well, his
memory, right. And occasionally the spell gets broken, once by Aqua, right? And he remembers all the awful things he did.
Everything, yeah.
He just goes into like a complete kind of breakdown.
Cocoon of embarrassment.
Anyway, that's the trash race to the bottom. We're kind of there at the moment with like the slave isekai stuff that's getting produced.
All of the other isekai since then have been just horrific. Arifureta has 2 seasons of anime. Sure. And all that is if I punch a girl and she cries, I own her now.
Saga of Tanya the Evil, though.
Are we getting another anime season of that?
We're getting something, I can't remember what it is.
There's a movie coming, but it's going to be the Christmas special. And you know, the Christmas special in Tanya is her attacking at Christmas.
And committing war crimes at Christmas time.
I can't wait. It'll be great. But I think, yeah, it comes out, and then the following year, Overlord comes out. They're not written by the same people, but there is literally an advert for Overlord in Tanya, if you pay attention to the background scenes.
I haven't seen that yet. I would love to see that, actually.
It's in the first episode, in the train station, if you want to go and look in the anime.
I will after the cast.
But they're both very good, right?
I'm going to contest that in the weirdest way possible.
Yeah.
Please note, I love Overlord. Personally, I would consider it my favorite isekai at the moment, just below ReZero.
Okay.
But the way the anime has adapted this season that's airing right now is, I think, very boring for anime-only fans.
I don't think that's true.
They cut out 2 battle scenes, and then they've put together a story from later on in the books into the current era, cutting out an entire pretty important plot development. So compared to the books, let me just finish.
Yeah, sure.
Compared to the books, we had 3 plot developments happen that have now not happened in the anime. So these last 3 episodes, we have seen a lot of people talking and not much else.
Yeah, but, you know, I watched that show for the interactions between Demio, Gilberto, and Ainz. That's the only reason to watch it.
I'll be honest with you. Watching everything go wrong and then Ainz go exactly as expected is what I live for. But I will say, I just think that the experience from an anime-only perspective is a lot duller this season.
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, I'm enjoying it. And
thank God.
I think I liked it more than 3, to be honest. So.
Well, it's hard to like something less than 3 in many regards, because
it's not
it
that
had
bad.
all of the build-up in the universe, and then it ended with "What if clowns?"
What if clowns?
The war is beginning.
The war is over.
You know?
I have some issues with the way they try to make Ainz's image revitalized. I mean, he did kill like 200,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly some people are starting to admire him. You know, it seems a bit soon after that's happened.
Wait, who's admiring him on the kingdom side?
You know, guild guy, some of the nobles, so on and so forth. It's slowly happening. People are stopping being as icy to him as they initially were.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think Guild Guy in particular went in expecting torture and chains, and anything less than that is an improvement in his eyes.
Indeed, that is true. Nevertheless, it's very strange. I think, if you think about it logically for any amount of time. But we didn't get more things like Overlord or Tanya.
Mm-hmm.
We went straight into my youth romantic comedy as wrong as I expected. Which I think you like, right?
I love that show. It's one of my favorites. Well, okay. I like the first 2 seasons of that show. It's one of my favorites.
Sure. And I think that was at least it wasn't an isekai. That's the one thing I would say about that show. I don't understand why you like it, but, you know.
I think the writing of the characters is spectacular. Perhaps what they are doing and their setting is fairly mundane and maybe even a little bit boring. But, like, the fact that the author is trying to give us the reasons why everything is happening and then presenting us with a scenario and, like, figuring out what everyone wants to happen and seeing how it plays out is very cool in my mind.
I think it maybe directly leads into Kaguya-sama, which is the one
totally does.
Redeeming quality I think that show has. It's not terrible. I'd give it like a 6 out of 10. I just don't understand the high praise part of it.
I think a lot of people really appreciated well-written characters. It's not something we see in anime too much. Like really deeply well-written characters as well.
But then we take another dive, and I think the trash cycle is just something that repeats itself.
It definitely does.
Thoroughly. Then we get How to Pick Up Girls in a Dungeon. Irregular at Magic High School, or whatever it's called.
The Irregular at Magic High School. Oh, right. I actually forgot about the Magic High School battle arcs.
Yeah.
Oh my god, Asterisk War, and so on and so forth.
Right. But then, you get like Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime, which is pretty decent.
Pretty okay, yeah.
I mean, it's a show without any consequences or stakes. And sometimes I appreciate that.
I mean, to be fair, when he created peace with the Dwarven Kingdom, another kingdom felt threatened by their alliance and attacked them. And, like, there were major consequences for that.
Briefly. I mean, for that kingdom, there were major consequences, for sure.
Also
not for any of the main characters.
I mean, look, okay, there were consequences. He had to become a demon lord. Something he didn't want to do.
That's true.
The whole point of the beginning of the show is he wants to stay out of international politics. So he doesn't want to become a demon lord so that he doesn't have to deal with it.
Yeah.
And then because the only way to accomplish undoing a mistake was to become a demon lord, he's now forced to do all of this shit. And you can still feel in some of the later stuff, he's still negative about being a demon lord. He doesn't want it, but he understands that since he took up the mantle, he has to do stuff.
I just want to change my opinion slightly on the dark stuff. I mean, we did get Goblin Slayer as a result.
Yes, we got Goblin Slayer, which is so badly written, it's funny.
The manga is actually pretty good, though. I'd recommend the manga.
The manga has great action scenes.
Yeah. Unfortunately, as a contrast to that, we get Rising of the Shield Hero, and I think you've described it as Author-kun having a story for the first book, and then not really knowing what to do after that.
So I think this is actually part of the light novel thing, and why discussing light novels is interesting to me in part. Because like I was saying, a lot of these authors, they produce the beginnings of their books online, and then the entirety of the community can go there, critique things, and then the author can edit stuff to try and fix those mistakes.
Yeah.
And so, if somebody has been writing the book for 2 to 3 years, and then it gets picked up to be an anime, everything that people have been critiquing for 2 to 3 years will probably be interesting and maybe even slightly polished. And then, when we come to the bit where people haven't read the latest chapters or Author-kun hasn't written that far on the website, and we have to rely only on Author-kun's writing talent, we very quickly go down a path of sadness and failure.
And I think that is basically what's happened. I think there is a monopoly at the moment on this sort of content. And it's in that monopoly's interest just to churn out as much as possible before people stop reading. The author of Konosuba spoke about being basically locked in a room, so he would accomplish his obligations on time for Konosuba series. And I think occasionally that shows in the work, where basically sometimes just nothing's happening and no one knows what's going on and there's not really any plot.
But words are being written.
Are being written, for sure. Especially in the that Megamin spin-off series, gosh, nothing happens really of note in that. As far as the story is concerned.
It was created so that they could keep selling things, even though the main story has come to an end.
Yeah. And that's sad. Although, just in laws of averages, if Kadokawa is making 160 light novels every year, something's bound to be pretty good, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's not complain too much about it. Some honorable mentions. Something you probably haven't thought about in years. Katana Gatari.
Katana Gatari, yeah.
Which has a very characteristic anime as well. I'd recommend people give that a go.
I consider it one of the best anime of all time, honestly.
Indeed.
Easily top 10.
A good, sad, sort of fictional samurai Edo period story.
Samurai Dragon Ball Z.
Epic samurai exaggeration story. Magic swords and beasts and things, yeah. But very good. And just to mention another one, we got Spice and Wolf also from around the same time, 2006-ish. Which I believe is getting a second season.
It is getting a second season.
As we mentioned, you might have seen Spice and Wolf, or it was 2008, 2009 anime. Think, that's a great fun little story about the merchant and his
trading
spirit animal companion, I suppose. I was really kind of educational about medieval economics from a certain perspective. I don't know if any of it's true, right? And Apple, right? For sure, and Apple. The wolf likes apples for some reason.
Hello.
But yeah,
she was a great waifu.
Indeed.
You'll have to excuse me.
So it's been 15 years and now we're getting a second season, which I will happily watch in very much the same way I'm watching Mahasama's second season, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Mahasama's another one where I feel like author-kun wrote 60% of the story online and got lots of editorial help. Yeah. And then the back 30%, 40% is sagging.
Indeed. And so all of that takes us to present day, where we've come to the pinnacle of light novel achievements with I was reincarnated as a vending machine in a dungeon in another world, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Part of the series of I was reincarnated as a sword and I was reincarnated as a hot spring. Different authors, but they all launched these books at the same time.
Would you recommend any of them?
I'll be honest with you. The manga for I Was Reincarnated as a Hot Spring has some nice moments, but not for reading.
I see.
And none of the rest, no.
What do you think of of our overview, Dylan, of light novels? Something you'd be interested in at all?
No, there's too much quantity over quality going on in what you're describing. Like it's an ocean to go into for. It's the same reason why I don't read Stephen King anymore. It's like they were like
a very bad joke.
There are diamonds in there, but the amount of work you would have to go through to try and find them.
It's funny you say that, Dylan.
It's not quite as bad as Stephen King. I mean, Stephen King believes in writing a new book every 3 months.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Like pretty much all of, not all, but the vast majority of the things you're describing.
Vast majority is total trash.
Of the things you're describing. Indeed. And the things that we've watched, I don't have high opinions of. So.
Mm-hmm. Wait, can I just ask? Right, Overlord is one of the things we've already watched.
We've already spoken about this.
Yeah, fair enough.
You know how I feel about Overlord.
He has a mediocre opinion of Overlord.
I'm going to suggest that almost no light novel is for you in particular.
I mean,
but allow me to, yeah.
Like I get it. It's like if you want to read. Okay, when I say this, don't take this as an insult. It's definitely not aimed as an insult.
Mm-hmm.
If you want that sort of light tabloidy flight of fancy,
mm-hmm.
it's a lollipop, right? Go for it.
It's kind of like a Mills and Boon sort of style.
Yeah, exactly.
So from my perspective, it's a little bit like the comic books of the 90s in the West. You get a short story that's a little bit lightly written, and if you get enough issues together, you might get a golden arc, a wonderful story. But you'll get 65 meh or shit arc, and you'll never get a complete story in one book.
Yeah.
That kind of pitch is how I view light novels.
Yeah, which is...
I just want to talk about my journey through light novels now, because I just wanted to mention, you were talking about having to wade through stuff to find the diamonds.
Mm-hmm.
I recently passed my 2,500th series of light novels. This means that I've read at least 20 chapters of each novel. I've completed more than 400 chapters in more than 500 novels. I have started to read the novels in Japanese. I don't read Japanese, but Google Translate and some like making words work has been happening.
Mm-hmm.
And from all of that, I found maybe 3 books that I really found super enjoyable and well worth reading. So
you agree with me?
I totally agree. 2,500 books, and I have found 3.
I think Dylan's analogy to comparing them to comic books is pretty accurate, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I said comic books from the 90s, yeah.
Yeah. Just in general, though, I mean, most comic books are pretty trash. Especially...
The overall arc tends towards being disappointing or not great. Yeah.
Especially like the modern style collective writing comic book series thing that Marvel and DC have been trying to do. Where, you have to read this comic because it's tied into this comic. If you want to keep up with the Guardians of the Galaxy, you have to read Iron Man and da-da-da-da-da-da.
That's a very old and common technique they used. I mean, they did that with Constantine and Swamp Thing a lot.
Yeah, and Neil Gaiman's story things.
Which to be quite frank, I feel like should be treated as a taboo move, because it's very I feel
it's the go-to move if you read any comic books.
I know it's a product and it needs to be sold. So,
mm-hmm.
but look, I will say this. I mean, if I took that view, it can be applied to pretty much any of the main forms of media, right? Like pretty much all TV is junk. Pretty much all books are junk. That's why you follow a specific author or specific authors or directors or writers, across the different media formats. So, if my problem is that there's none that have piqued my interest. So, to the extent where I'm now going to go and follow them and really wait for the...
I was just going to say, though, I think we're being very negative, but, I mean, there are, like, some legitimately good light novels that are very entertaining to read.
I personally think the ReZero light novel series is perhaps one of the best I've ever read.
And people love the Overlord series as well.
Overlord, Konosuba, the fact that it has an ending automatically gives it a whole pile of points, in my opinion.
Still, I've not read the last chapter.
I can't suggest Konosuba to everyone because, unfortunately, Kazuma is
you just have to
a specific type of character.
Turn your brain off when Kazuma's on screen.
If you can turn your brain off, it's a great series. But I feel like when someone adds a qualifier like that to a series, it's not a great series.
Yeah,
but I personally enjoyed my time with it a great deal.
Yeah, I mean, I read them all in like a month. That's the great thing about light novels, right?
Yeah, once they're published, you can just binge.
Yeah.
And none of the language is very heavy as well.
No.
One of the particular advantages to light novels is they are written for a teenager audience in particular.
What I was going to say is this is really intended for a younger audience, generally speaking. Although anyone can read them. They're not not really written for like children. And what it does is it gets a lot of kids interested in reading, and that can't be bad, regardless of how you feel about it. And
Sure.
we don't do that in the West anymore. We don't have. Do you remember all of those sort of shorter novels you used to get from Scholastic?
The Hardy Boys, Nancy Drew,
all
the famous five.
The Star Wars books as well. You know, like Jedi Apprentice, Animorphs, those sort of things as well.
Yeah, Goosebumps was super popular.
Goosebumps is another one.
YA novels, as they were called. Although then
YA novels are different thing completely now. YA novels
I was going to say
Maze
that
Runner.
definition has changed significantly.
Maze Runner and all of that.
Artemis Fowl, so on and so forth. There used to be these pulp novels that might have 50 books in a series, like the Animorphs, for example. That would be written as just something for kids to basically read because they had some spare time. And I guess people don't do that anymore because, you know, internet and streaming and all that sort of stuff. But I mean, this is kind of filling that niche. I mean, it's sad that Japan is only the only country in the world that seems to be doing that.
Sort of thing.
And if you're not interested in anime or Japan, then it's kind of sad.
Korean light novels have kind of overtaken Japanese light novels for me.
Right.
I'm still reading about 260 to about 300 Japanese light novels, but I'm reading literally more than 500 Korean novels. So
Korean and Japanese styles tend to be quite similar, though.
Similar.
Yeah.
But I will say, between Korean, Chinese, and Japanese light novels, they follow themes. And the Japanese light novel follows the theme that a successful hero is one that has a harem a little too hard.
Oh, yeah.
And the means by which they create a harem are oftentimes things that make me uncomfortable.
Indeed.
Like, for example, I own you, I am your master, but I'm not going to mistreat you, therefore you should fall in love with me.
Right. That's
Is the
the
thing I
trend
just
at the
don't
moment.
want-
Yeah.
I just don't want to deal with that. So I've been losing interest in that sort of. And another one, the guy gains mind control powers, and he accidentally mind controls the girl into being into him, and then he feels so bad for ruining her that he keeps her with him.
Yep.
And I'm like, this is the worst thing I have read. You kidnapped someone you mind controlled because you felt guilty that you ruined her.
I think the
You fucking monster.
problem with Japan at the moment is people spend a lot of time just in their own heads. And
So
certain
I've
things have
been-
made that worse in recent years, and it's starting to show in the literature.
Yeah. So I've been cooling off a little bit on primarily Japanese written light novels. I can speak English, but the Korean ones have a stronger tendency towards not reincarnation, but time reversal.
I haven't.
And most of the time reversal ones are like, this time I'm not going to dedicate my life to this girl that ruined my life. I'm not going to dedicate myself to this company that didn't appreciate me. I'm going to work out. I'm going to have a better relationship with my family. I'm going to be a better person. I just fucking approve of that. So,
I mean, I haven't really read or watched a lot of Korean stuff, but the stuff I have engaged with sort of seems to indicate that the Koreans understand the world better than the Japanese, and have like a more international kind of flavor to their stuff, and so it's much more accessible to a wider audience. I mean, Korean movies are pretty
that's
great.
Entirely possible,
you know,
because I am international to Japan, and I'm finding their stuff just more accessible. Although there's a lot of like wealth. How do I put it? Apologetic wealthiness. I don't know. Where like being wealthy means you can act like an asshole, and that's just okay.
Korea has a particular culture around that sort of stuff.
So a lot of their books have a wealthy person treating our MC badly, and he feels bad about it. But they're wealthy, so I'd better leave them alone.
There was Space Sweepers was a movie that came out recently. It has exactly the same exactly the same theme there with the Elon Musk kind of guy, sort of Elysium style, treating the main guy badly because he's wealthy.
It's a very, very common theme in Korean products.
Which is because they essentially had
every Korean series I've watched has that as a theme.
They had like a monopolistic, like a dictatorship for a while. So the views of rich people in Korea are very, very, very negative.
Well, the chaebols, which are the corporation groups, still exist in Korea. They're still
Indeed
heavily influential.
Which is exactly the same thing that happened to Japan. It was called the Zatsubai. But, the Americans stopped that.
Yes, yeah.
In the
They
40s,
broke them up
50s.
at least,
yeah.
so that the American corporations can rule over them instead. Ha ha ha.
I mean, it didn't actually work out that way. They just made it so that individuals couldn't essentially own the entire economy anymore. And it worked out really well for Japan for a long time. But Korea is still going through that process.
The Korean mangas have a strong tendency toward, not mangas, sorry, light novels, have a stronger tendency towards being like, this time I'll be a little bit wealthier, I'll be a little bit smarter, I'll be a little bit more of a better son.
Was Tower of God a light novel?
Tower of God was technically a light novel. Technically, though, here's the problem with that one.
I think it was
it
wasn't
began
a visual
as a light
novel,
but it only had about 16 to 20 chapters, I think.
Okay.
It might be novels, but regardless, it had a very short run in the light novel side, and then it became a webcomic. And the webcomic is the long-running one. So the webcomic is now technically the actual source.
Okay. Yeah.
Because we ran out of light novel stuff a long time ago, and we're just doing webcomic now.
But anyway, that's going to conclude our super long conversation about light novels. I think it was quite exhaustive. I think we made some good points.
We covered like the beginning, how it's going, and where we wanted to go kind of idea.
And I just wanted to say at the end, you can get a lot of these for free now, without resorting to illegal methods. If you just have an Amazon account, like usually like the first light novel in a series, and this is really famous, like ReZero Konosuba, will be free. So you read it and then buy the rest. So if you want to try out any of these, that's kind of the way to do it. But yeah, I mean, I read more. It's good for you. Do something like that. If you're a kid, if I was a kid, like again, this is basically what I would just be getting obsessed with, I guess. Light novel series. Yeah. Anyway, thanks for talking to me, guys. I'll see you again next week.
Great cast, guys.
Ciao.
Ciao for now.
Cheers.